Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Well, welcome back. I'm Denise, and I am joined by Leah, Katie, and Bonnie, and we're talking about our one cool thing. Now, Leah has already talked about Wonder Woman. Not in her entirety, but a heck of a lot of stuff. If you missed it, you got to go listen to it. Okay, so before we dive back in, let's get to know something random about our gal pals. I am going to ask you guys if you could be any character, cartoon character for a day, who would it be?
Dun, 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 dun. I mean, my first instinct is to say Wonder Woman, but you know, that's only because I'm gonna just try to think of a different one. I'm gonna push myself.
My first instinct is to say Scooby-Doo or Garfield.
Scooby-Doo.
Right? Because those are just my thing. Do you want lasagna? I love the idea. I always want food. You know this,
right?
But I feel like it's an opportunity. I'm inspired after listening to your Wonder Woman to be a strong female, superhero type character. Yeah. And when I was a kid, XMen were super big.
Yes, hell yeah.
It was like when they came out. Mm-hmm. And so we would play it with the neighborhood kids, you know, running around outside. What kids don't get to do these days, being delinquents in our neighborhood. And I would always play the role of Storm.
Storm was a badass.
XMen.
I love Storm.
I embodied that. That was my thing. Yes. Every time I was like, oh, I'm going to kill all of you. Stupid boys. Because I was also the only girl in the neighborhood. So I had my choice of female characters because, of course, right? And I was always Storm.
But at least you didn't fucking pick Jean Grey. Can I go on a 5 to 20 minute rant about Jean Grey?
No.
Okay, I won't.
Next month.
All I'll say about Jean Grey is, that's what she does. For 20 minutes. I was going
to do that. I was going to control the elements and I was going to fuck you up.
Exactly, because that was what Storm was. And
right.
She was brilliant. And it's like, did they put all of their energy into Storm? And then Jean Grey's like, all we have left for dialogue for you is, that's it.
Well, you know.
Jean Grey was kidnapped in every episode. I couldn't stand that one. Anyway, sorry.
She goes with her strengths.
Which are none, but she's so powerful.
But she was like into Cyclops, right?
She was into everybody.
Oh,
she took turns around the X-Men,
I thought
which
it was
I'm
like
not going to fault her for.
It was like a love triangle with Cyclops and Wolverine.
I always wanted Wolverine.
Yeah,
I guess I always have liked a hairy guy, even though back in that day, I would have been like, no.
I would have picked the grumpy, more of the grumpy puss, not so much the hairiness, but the hairiness.
Apparently, I like hairy and grumpy. This is the life I lead now.
You know what? We all got a type.
Anyway. Now that I've illuminated my entire life with that revealing question,
I like it.
What do you guys have?
That is some random info about a gal pal. I love it.
I'm just trying to think of what Katie's thinking watching, like, Lord of the Rings. There's a bunch of, like, dwarves and stuff.
Harry.
She loves to watch those
Look
dwarves.
at that Gandalf. Oh.
So I'm not another big gasp around the table. I'm not that into the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Are they the people that have multiple breakfasts? Because I could be
okay,
then I'm 100% into that.
Oh, no, that's the Hobbits.
That's the
in
Hobbits.
that movie.
Hobbits.
Yeah.
Yes.
They
got hairy feet.
Yeah.
They do. They do.
It works for me.
And second breakfast.
Yeah.
And
It would work. I think so. Multiple levels. Yeah.
I'm in.
okay.
Bonnie, do you know yours? Because I'm trying
I don't even remember what the question was.
If you could be any cartoon character for a day, who would it be?
What instantly came to my mind
Yeah.
is the lady from Fooly Cooley, which I had to look up her name, and I have no idea how to pronounce it.
Okay.
But it's Haruko. I don't know. If you've seen it, you know who she is.
Okay.
She is this lady, and it turns out I think she's like an alien.
Okay.
I haven't seen it in years. But she is like a freaking weirdo. She comes in to like just torture this like 13-year-old boy. He somehow like convinces their dad to let them live in their house as like their housekeeper. And she just annoys the crap out of this boy all day. She has a guitar that she just like smacks people in the head with. Like, she's amazing.
Nice.
And like robots come out of people's heads or something. It's really
Like
weird,
you do.
but it's great.
Sweet. I have never heard of that
That's
one
good.
before. Okay, all right. I will have to do some research. Damn it. Okay, it's really hard not to say Wonder Woman. And then
Say
like,
Wonder Woman. You can
I
get everything
know,
you want.
exactly.
You
I
could
was-
say Scarlet Witch, the most powerful Avenger.
I know, for some reason I don't connect with Scarlet Witch. My daughter does. My daughter loves Scarlet Witch. Like, that is her Avenger. And then my youngest is totally like Black Widow is like her Avenger. Like, she absolutely loves Black Widow. And I love Black Widow too. It's just so much happened in that red room that I'm like, oh God. So I'm like, no. Okay, but I will say when I was a kid, because it's Wonder Woman now. Let's put it that way. When I was a kid, though, Jessica Rabbit.
Of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. And I also loved Kathleen Turner and like, yeah. So for a day, I would like to get to know what that feels like because I assume it feels like velvet. And yeah, exactly. So for a day, I want to be Jessica Rabbit. How about that?
Yeah. Am I supposed to answer this too?
Yes.
I
What
am.
would yours be?
Well, just the first thing that comes to mind, you guys are gonna be like, Mighty Mouse.
Oh, that is a good one. I remember Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse, because when I was a little kid, it was I loved to watch Mighty Mouse. He was the person I had. I guess he's not a person, but I had
The
a
mouse.
crush on him.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And he was, I didn't know Superman existed because we're talking like pre-kindergarten.
Right. Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be saved by him, but I also wanted to be like him and save people. So, Mighty Mouse. That's
Very nice.
That's
See?
my thing.
At least it wasn't Hong Kong Phooey. Do you
Oh,
remember that one?
No. Oh my God.
It had the best theme song, though. Well, not the best, but, a pretty good theme song, though.
Is it that dog in the karate suit?
Hong Kong Phooey, #1
Yeah.
superhero.
He was annoying.
He, changed in a filing cabinet.
Yeah. So somebody was on drugs when they created that.
All
character.
of the drugs.
Hanna-Barbera's weird.
I don't.
they
They are.
Yeah.
Shh, you didn't hear me say that.
Like,
Well, I am so excited about what I have to talk about today. I actually make myself laugh. Okay,
Good.
So I get this call from Leah, and she says,
Yes.
"Okay, Denise, our topic is women of cartoons."
Yes.
And so I thought, oh well, I will come up with some history of the evolution of female characters in comics and cartoons because
Yes. It's
everybody
easy.
needs to have that
Nice.
foundation.
Totally.
I thought it'd be great to give an overview of female characters in comics and or cartoons.
Yes.
And, kind of like a Wikipedia page of info that will give us a solid foundation to start
A
with. And then we
database
can-
with charts and graphs and
Yep,
everything.
And we can,
PowerPoint.
all those is on,
Right.
You can't see my charts.
Correct.
But I made
they're
them.
all there. They're
They're there. I
spectacular.
created them.
Yes, absolutely.
And, and then we can delve into things like, Wonder Woman.
Right.
So I was thinking of starting with something like, Minnie Mouse, Snow
Yes.
White, Orphan Annie, and then moving to Lucy from the Peanuts and Veronica and Betty from the
Yes.
Archies and Daphne and is it Velma? Or
Velma.
Velma.
Velma with a
It's
V.
Velma with a V. That's
Yeah.
what I thought. I had this argument with someone though.
Yeah.
They said it was TH, and I said no, it's whatever.
It's with a V.
We had an argument. I won. So, and then of course there was Wilma and Betty from the Flintstones, and
Yes.
Nancy and Kathy in the comic strips,
Mhm.
and the Powerpuff Girls, Princess
Yes.
Fiona. I thought we would
Mhm.
just see the arch of how
Have the evolution.
the evolution of how women
Yeah.
have changed. Oh my God, I had no idea how difficult that would be.
I
There-
love you for the attempt.
There is so much information on this
Yes.
topic. There are dozens of categories.
Yes.
I mean, if you just Google female characters in
Yeah.
animation, which is just films, shorts, like, cartoons, whatever, and TV series, you will find several thousand lists.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you Google female characters in comics,
Yeah.
it's tens of thousands.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yay. But then hard when you're doing the research.
Yeah. So I said, there's like no way. I'm sure I'm guessing that there's probably professors that teach classes on this
You would
topic.
hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there has to be, and I could not possibly do it justice. So I said, we're not going there.
There you
So
go.
I decided to choose one character
Yes.
and then study how she came about.
There you go. Yeah.
How did society at the time influence her creation?
Perfect.
How did she evolve, and how does she fit into today's society?
Yeah, there you go.
So it sounds like I'm smart, but really, I'm just making shit up. So
that's what we do at this table.
So I'm going to start telling you about this character that I chose.
Okay.
And you guys are going to tell me when you know who I'm talking about.
Dun, dun, dun. I like
And
it.
you'll probably get it pretty
Challenge.
quickly because this character is known across the world.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, so the Katie's really sure right now.
Okay. So
Katie's like,
I
oh no.
chose an animated cartoon character
Okay.
who debuted in 1930. That's
Okay.
probably enough for her to know who it is.
Yeah, Katie knows.
And by 1939 had been featured in in 90.
Betty Boop.
Yes.
Oh, you guys make fun of me, and here I go.
Okay, I am going to tell more clues now. Pretend you didn't hear that she said Betty Boop.
Right, no, we have no idea who you're
But
talking about. Good job, Katie.
So Betty
Good
Boop,
job.
Betty Boop, in that 9-year period from when she debuted in the 1930, she was featured in 90 theatrical cartoons. Which,
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was more than
Yeah.
anybody else. So more than Mickey Mouse.
Wow,
So you know
yeah.
what? Forget Mickey Mouse.
Right, exactly.
So she had her own comic strip. She had mass merchandising, and today her merchandise still sells, and she still appears in commercials and in films, and
Wow.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And she's known across the world. So now she was originally created as an anthropomorphic French poodle.
Oh,
So
she's a dog?
she was a dog.
This is like Hello Kitty.
And you can actually go and watch a video
Yeah.
because I did because
Yeah.
I was doing research. I took this seriously.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
And it shows she's this French poodle, but she's also part person.
Right.
But then she evolved over a few years into what she became known as, which was like the jazz age flapper.
Yeah.
But although the flapper era was over by the time she debuted, because it was in the 20s.
Yeah.
And so by the time she was actually on the screen, she was this jazz flapper, but she was beloved by Depression era audiences because she reminded them of the carefree days. of the
Yeah, she was an
1950s.
escape.
She
Yeah,
was
yeah.
an escape.
I dig it.
Exactly. And she's also considered one of the first and best known animated sex symbols.
Yes, that's
Yes.
right, girl. She's the first Jessica Rabbit of her day.
Actually, there was a study, not a study, there was a
Survey?
A survey.
Okay, yeah.
And she ranked as number 2. Jessica Rabbit ranked as number 1.
There you go. Well,
So-
I mean, somebody's boobs were bigger.
Yeah, they intentionally made her small because that was what the flapper style was back in
Right.
the 20s. They
Exactly.
wanted them
Yeah.
tiny little, but she had big hips.
Yes,
So-
it did.
But she was considered one of the first, animated sex symbols, and she was created and marketed by a man
Of course.
because
you
they were the
know.
ones who.
That's what got it made.
yeah.
So, yeah.
But she was very popular with adult audiences because her cartoons contained many sexual and psychological elements.
Ah.
So yes, there was all these innuendos and all these things, and she would wink, and you guys have all seen Betty Boop,
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Boop, 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 boop.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so adults loved this,
Yeah.
because it was like inside joke, and we got it.
Right. It was the Shrek of it.
Exactly. So now animator Max Fleischer, he was the guy who created her,
Okay.
and other men helped develop her, but he based her on the singer Helen Kane.
Gotcha.
Kane. And Helen decided that after her career started to go away and she wasn't making money, and she saw this cartoon character of her making all this money,
Mm-hmm.
they were taking advantage of her.
Right. Her likeness.
And they were exploiting her.
Mhm.
So she sued them.
Nice.
She went after him and went all the way to the New York Supreme Court,
Ah.
and she lost.
Uh-huh.
And here's why.
Yeah.
Because while he had based the character on her,
Mhm.
she had based her character on someone else.
Oh.
So she had exploited. Her act was from a black jazz singer,
Gotcha.
Esther Jones,
Right.
known as Baby Esther.
Yeah, Baby Esther. Okay.
So
yeah.
she stole it from Baby Esther, who,
Right.
if you ever see any videos of Baby Esther performing.
She's very Betty Boopish.
She's also amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
she's
yeah.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that Helen was, not good. It's just she could copy.
It was a copy of a copy. It wasn't originator.
It wasn't the original.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she was white. So, hello. It was the era.
Right, exactly.
But so that's one of the little, backstories about Betty Boop. She's actually based on a black jazz singer who, couldn't admit that to the white people, though.
Of course.
Her voice, of course, was very squeaky, very baby voice, and she has been performed by many women, most notably Mae Questel.
Sure.
Questel. I learned how to say it.
Okay, gotcha.
Questel.
I'm like, I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
if you were saying it right
now,
or wrong.
her first film came out in 1930, but 1931 to 1938, it was this Mae gal, and in 1988, Mae did the voice again.
Oh, cute.
What was it for?
In 88?
In 1988, she was Betty Boop. In this movie.
Was it Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yes, it was.
I was thinking that too.
It was.
Because I'm like, Betty was in it, but I didn't know
and
if
it
would
was
be
the same voice actor.
That's
But there have been
cool.
like over a dozen.
Right, but they found the quintessential originator voice.
Right.
Oh,
and
that's
they used, and she
beautiful.
sounded exactly the same. She didn't sound like some old lady.
Of course.
So
Beautiful.
So actually Betty is 90 this year.
Wow, look at that.
She looks really good for 90.
Yeah, there you go.
Because they were trying to make her like a 16-year-old.
Right.
So
which is problematic for a sex symbol. Let's just,
Well, see, that's when the backlash started.
I'd say maybe not back in the day. Like
Right.
people were
That
getting
was
married at 13.
the Marian
So
age.
16's a little on the shelf, honestly.
Where's her kids? Right, exactly.
Well, you know what?
On
Backlash
the
came
shelf.
not too long after
Yeah.
she started. So for the first 3 years of her existence, 1930 to 33, she was all in all these fun things, doing wink, wink, nod, nod, haha, and showing off her, underside and everything. Her bloomers, yes, and then the National Legion of Decency stepped in.
Them bitches.
And they came up with the production code called the Hays Code of 1934.
Hays Code.
And they imposed guidelines and restrictions on the content that films could, reference with sexual innuendos. So this, of course, greatly affected her. Mm-hmm. And she could no longer be a carefree flapper. So they evolved her over the next 6 years to 1939. They evolved her into either a spinster housewife.
Sure, that makes sense.
Wow.
Right,
whatever,
yeah.
or a career
On the shelf.
girl. Yeah, or a career girl.
She was on the
she
shelf.
was allowed to be a career girl.
Oh, okay.
But
She got a job.
But she had long dresses. She was covered up a lot more.
Yeah.
So, and her hair became less curly. They took her curls out. Why is it having curls dangerous for a woman?
I don't know.
That means you're a wild, crazy woman.
It's like a free
You're
spirit.
untamed.
Well, they took away most of her curls. And she stopped wearing her bracelets. Like Wonder Woman.
Her powers were activated.
Her powers were activated. She lost her bracelets and her hoop earrings.
Oh, she couldn't deflect bullets anymore.
And she became wiser and more mature.
All right, okay.
So, this self-conscious wholesomeness of this cartoon no longer appealed to adults because they're like,
Right,
we don't
exactly.
care. And she actually started to fall out of favor. Kids started watching her because they were geared towards her. And she actually, her last film, she wasn't even in.
Oh.
She became secondary. She became the co-star in her series to all the male characters.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's
So-
too true.
Which makes me think, society then didn't know what to do with female characters.
Right.
I mean, either make them the sexual beings or these one-dimensional supporting
Right,
women,
exactly. What is it, the whore or the crone, basically?
Yeah.
It's
Which, that might have been the 30s, but look at how cyclical that is.
I know, right?
I mean, look at the 50s.
Still.
And the 60s.
Yeah.
And look at actually, Marilyn Monroe kind of copied Betty Boop's style.
Yeah.
She was powerful, sexual being, and it was okay.
Right, exactly.
But she was also slut-shamed.
Oh, of course she was. But it made bank, though.
So, and then in the 70s, the style came back, like the flappers with the short skirts and women's the
women's lib.
movement.
Yep, exactly. And the mini skirts.
So,
Woo!
actually, Betty Boop was brought back. In 1974, a series was started up again. Didn't go very far.
No.
Yeah. And then in the 80s, people learned how to market. Let me tell you.
They learned how to market women.
They learned how to market anything. It's like, Betty Boop basically was Hello Kitty of the 80s.
Lunchboxes and stickers and notebooks. Yes.
I remember all that in the classroom. The
So,
sweatshirts.
Oh, yeah.
There are websites you can go to and buy all this crap.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Of course.
So that's just, it just... Now she still appears in commercials and on comics, and she continues to be popular, but I just would love to hear your guys' opinion on, well, what do you think? I mean, I obviously told my opinion about how she started out as this powerful female character, but she was all about sex.
Right, yeah.
And she was also very innocent in her sexuality.
Yeah.
And you'd always have these guys in her films peeking, trying to get a glimpse of her body. So it's basically like sexual harassment.
Peep show.
And,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, she was kind of clueless about it all, and she was just going about doing her thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes she did beat the people up for harassing her, but that stopped as she evolved. That stopped, and she became very much more the, do whatever you tell me to do. And of course,
submissive.
Submissive.
There it is again. Submissive women in comics.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
So, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think that Betty Boop could come back and really be a powerful force? I don't know.
There is part of me. Okay, there is. Have you guys seen the Bombshell comic series line? It might be way too geeky. All right. No. They are taking Wonder Woman, Batgirl, Supergirl, crap, and there's one more because I thought there was 4.
I highly doubt it was Betty Boop.
It's not Betty Boop because she's not part of the DC universe sort of thing. So it's the DC universe girls. They're putting them in World War II as basically bomber chicks, as the girls that would be on the bombshells of the planes, and they're fighting adventures in this old Rosie the Riveter type style.
Ooh.
But they're doing it with kind of modern girl power-ness. I think if they took Betty Boop and put her in one of those bombshell, female empower, Rosie the Riveter type recreations, I think now she could work. My thought is that Betty Boop was always created by men for men. And was pretty much kind of like a one note of her boop boop ba-doop, that it was just going to run tired. So she would need a reinvention of what it is to be a female character to pertain to today.
Well, actually, they did do some reinventing. They added in other characters before she fizzled out and became the submissive thing. Like she had a puppy dog, or she had a boyfriend, but she would say him sometimes. So
Steve.
He's
so Steve Trevor.
There was empowerment for a while, but it was squished.
Right,
It was
exactly.
squished by the decency people.
Of course. Well, the Hays Code people are terrible.
I mean, so...
Right.
Let's talk about that. Why?
Dun, 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 dun.
Why are they terrible?
No. Why is decency associated with
owning your sexuality?
Owning your sexuality, yeah.
Right, exactly.
With not being, or being asexual, basically, or not being, what?
Being confident
really only
in your
for
sexuality.
women.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Because if the guy is like, I can get any lady that I want, somehow that's not a decency violation. That's confidence.
Yeah. But if a woman does that, heaven forbid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is back in the day where they had the Comstock laws too. I mean, they were, and then like temperance, like they were cracking down everything. Yeah. People weren't allowed to have fun.
Nope.
Sex was for making babies. End of list.
That was it. That was all.
Well, it's another form of control too, because women were the ones that needed controlled, so they would do what men needed them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't be too asexual and not attractive because you had to fulfill your obligation to marry and bear children.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely couldn't be powerful and sexual and own that and control that because that's for your husband to control.
Right.
So I think that was kind of the theory of the time.
And
just
if
a whole lot of
control Betty Boop, then
there's just a whole lot of not having what did they call that? Self-advocacy,
Yeah. Standing up
There's
for yourself.
another word I'm thinking of, but yeah.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Self-determination. And just,
There you go.
yeah. You go from your family's house to your husband's household. I mean, that was very much when that
Independence,
was
is
the
that
day.
kind of what you mean? Independence a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a fancy word somewhere in my head,
There
but
you go.
it's not there at the moment.
There's been
Yeah,
bigger
it's
line.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I would say the sad thing is we can say that was then, but I would say we're not too far away from it now either.
I feel like we're
the way
hop
we
skipping
treat
a jump
women.
some days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pendulum, or if you want to picture it as being cyclical. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just. I still have hope though, because I see so many young people not buying into that.
Yeah.
at
That's
all.
true.
Exactly. I mean, they're not buying into gender. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
In the sense of
Yeah.
don't define me as a gender, let alone don't define me as sexuality.
Yeah.
Which is great because then that doesn't have this my sexuality is a power play or my sexuality needs to be like condemned or rated or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's good. It takes the power away from that because, I mean, for crying out loud, we are sexual beings. That's kind of how the evolution and how the human race keeps going. So it's like, wait a second.
Well, I like the little way that even in schools they're addressing it, that women and young women are addressing it, because a lot of it is also that men cannot control themselves, that we are responsible for that. So if you show your shoulder or your bra strap or something like that, and I love all the things I see about women being like, no.
Exactly. Figure out
This
how to
is the most
control your
important
damn
thing
self.
right now.
I walk down the
No.
street naked.
Mhm. A man
It
should be
doesn't-
able to control
Yeah,
himself.
you don't have a right
Yes.
to violate my body. So yeah.
My husband and I had that conversation when the rule book came home and Samantha couldn't wear a tank top in school because boys can't control themselves when they see a bare shoulder. And I went to my husband, I'm like, aren't you insulted as a man? Saying that men are so weak they can't control themselves with a shoulder. And he's like, oh, damn it. And he was like, so we were both really pissed. So we're just like, so every day you wear tank tops at home. But then it's like, wait a second. Nope, now we've gone backwards. Now we're telling her what to wear. But it was one of those things where I'm like, so now we just make fun of it. We're just like, oh no, what if somebody saw your shoulder?
I swear humor is the best sort. It's the best
Right.
way to cope with everything.
It diffuses.
Maybe Betty Boop could address that head on.
Yes,
We need some
this is
illustrator
true.
addressing that, like, I own my sexuality and you are to control yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
She could be showing those shoulders all over school. We could,
All
like,
over.
put that up on the lockers.
Exactly.
Yes.
I dig it.
Yep. I love it. I love it.
I like that idea because my initial knee-jerk was,
Yeah.
I just never liked Betty Boop.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
connect
don't
with her.
know.
I mean, I was kind of like,
I didn't know
she's
that much
adorable.
about her, but I just...
She was actually the
was
original
Scooby-Doo.
Kathy. Original,
Yeah.
except, you know,
Working girl.
working girl.
See?
Yeah. Yeah. Except she talked like this.
Maybe that was it.
That was probably it. Yeah.
She reminded me so much of Shirley Temple that I'm like, I would rather watch Shirley Temple. I think is kind of, you know what I mean, where I was at, where I'm just like, wait a minute, no, Shirley Temple is so much better because she's actually tapping and dancing and singing and playing. But
I will say the background
Yeah.
information makes me appreciate more, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you talked about her.
Cool.
Yeah.
and seeing
for
her
sure.
evolve throughout history too, to be like, damn it, Betty Boop.
And knowing, like, the forces
Got
that
robbed.
made her into someone wearing a long-ass dress and not being
I
able
know,
to
right?
do her, like, jazz singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tried in the 40s to evolve her into the big band type of a thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it
Cotton
did
Club
not work.
Mm.
Nope. She was the jazz one.
She's a
flapper
jazzy girl.
Well, we are coming up on the Roaring 20s.
I know, right?
That's true.
The 2020
Should make
Roaring
a comeback.
20s. Woo, woo. This would be a good time for a Betty Boop comeback.
Yeah, let's put that out there into the internet world because I see all the
Yeah.
time. Like, I looked
Bring
at
it.
the longest, creepiest post about people redrawing Disney characters.
Oh yeah,
Like, they were getting married and they were pregnant, and I was like, why am I looking at this? But I need to keep looking.
But I saw one today
Yeah.
that was Aurora from Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, and they were married. And I was like,
Ooh,
yes!
I haven't seen that one.
Exactly.
Really?
It's Snow White
Awesome.
kissing Aurora to wake her up from her slumber. And I'm
They
like,
are both little
down for
sleeping
it.
beauties, aren't they?
They
Yeah.
they are. And whatever it takes to get Snow
A
White
lot in
away
common.
from those 7 dwarfs.
Right.
That is some people
I will
pleasing
say-
shit right there.
Right. I will say they also drew the Disney people as career women.
Yeah.
And her career was psychologist, and she had
Yeah.
like the "How do you feel?" and it was the
Oh.
dwarves with all the emotions on her like
that is
office
cute.
wall.
That is
Okay.
cute.
Yeah.
That's clever.
I like
That's
that.
clever.
That is
Yeah.
very adorable.
It was a lot better
See.
than them being pregnant with their peoples.
Did you know the physical inspiration for Snow White was Hedy Lamarr?
I did not.
Yeah.
but
No,
can
I did
see it.
not.
That's cool.
Hedy Lamarr's like doughish look of I don't know what's going on. That was Hedy Lamarr's
I feel like
face.
that could be Betty Boop too, though.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of I mean, like what was it?
Style
Hedy
bend.
Lamar's quote: "Anybody can look glamorous. They just stand there and look stupid." I mean, that's her famous quote. So
awesome.
she says she had two looks: a doe in headlights, just like I don't know what's going on, and resting bitch face. And
That's
her
all you
resting
need.
bitch face was the basis for Catwoman. So her physical resting bitch face, as she got a little bit older, was the Catwoman inspiration in the
Oh,
comics.
I love it.
Yeah,
I do
Hedy Lamarr, inspiring everything.
Well, boop boop doo. I love it. That wraps it up for us. Just for us, not for you.
Correct.
For us this week. Join us next week as our next Gail Pal shares her one cool cartoon thing as Gail's Guide to the Galaxy podcast continues. Thanks for listening.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.